Welcome to today's presentation, where we have the pleasure to present Ascelia Pharma. So it was today's presentation. We are joined by Julie Brogren, Deputy CEO of the company. Today, of course, the Q3 announcement yesterday is the occasion, but as always in a biotech, of course, more focus on the regulatory and milestones on the pipeline achieved during the quarter, and of course, a short reminder of the case into Orviglance. As always, ask questions in the box down below. Do it in Danish if you feel for it. I will try and translate to the best of my ability. But for now, I'll hand the call over to you, Julia.
Yes, thank you, Michael. It's good to be here. Ascelia Pharma, I'll be making some forward-looking statements, so please pay attention to this. We work in orphan oncology. We identify, develop, and commercialize novel drugs that can help people with different rare cancer conditions. We're listed on Nasdaq in Stockholm. And we have two assets in our portfolio. Orviglance is a first-in-class liver diagnostic drug for liver MRI. And that's the drug I will be talking mostly about today, because we submitted the NDA, the new drug application, to the FDA in Q3 in September this year. Oncoral is a daily tablet formulation of a well-known chemotherapy, and we have the potential to help patients with a better efficacy and safety profile in treatment. It's ready for phase 2, but I will not talk so much about Oncoral today. So in Q3, the key events, we submitted the NDA, as mentioned, to the FDA for the approval of Orviglance. And then we strengthened our balance sheet significantly. We raised 30 million Swedish kronor before costs. We also converted, or Fenja converted, all their outstanding convertibles of 7.5 million. So now we have a clean balance sheet, you can say. We did update the timeline for the NDA submission, but as mentioned, submitted that early September. And then earlier this week, we announced some changes to the management team to support the future growth. We have two focus areas and opportunities to create value with Orviglance. The first one is to advance Orviglance to approval. At time we submitted the NDA mid-November, so very soon the FDA is expected to communicate the continuation of the review and by which date they expect to make their decision on an approval. That is a standard review with 10 months. The other focus area is to secure a partner that will commercialize Orviglance. And we, of course, work in the background to make sure the product is ready for a launch at approval by a partner. So if we talk about Orviglance today, as mentioned, I will not focus on Oncoral. The highlights: it's an attractive opportunity. We address a well-defined unmet need for liver imaging in cancer patients who also have severely impaired kidney function. I will get back to this. We address an $800 million US addressable market, and we have commercial scale manufacturing established. We completed all the clinical development with very strong data, including our phase 3 study. And then, as mentioned, we submitted the NDA, and our strategy is to commercialize with a partner. So Orviglance, it's a first-in-class liver imaging agent, which addresses a very specific unmet need for a group of patients who don't have as good alternative today. Cancer in the liver is a key challenge in cancer care, both because of primary liver cancer, but also because many cancer types develop metastases in the liver, colorectal, pancreatic cancer, and so forth. The standard for following up and identifying these metastases, for example, is to have an MRI procedure. And today, MRI procedures are done typically with a contrast agent to improve the image. And those contrast agents are based on a toxic heavy metal gadolinium. And a while back, it was discovered that gadolinium is associated with a very severe side effect called nephrogenic systemic fibrosis, potentially lethal side effect. And so the regulatory authorities added warnings to the gadolinium products, specifically for the patients where the risk is highest. That's patients that also have severely impaired kidney function because this gadolinium is excreted through the kidneys. So with Orviglance, which is based on manganese and not on gadolinium, we aim to be the imaging option for cancer patients who need liver imaging, and the option that is not associated with the potential side effects of gadolinium, including NSF. So it's a manganese-based and a liver-specific contrast agent.
Yeah, and I've seen some a little bit of writings about that some of the, you might say, competitors, which might not be the gadolinium, are trying to maybe lower the dose. Everybody knows it's a very toxic agent. Is that a pressure to you, or is that not enough because the reaction will be there no matter what the dose? So any thoughts? Could that be a threat to some of your business, or what are you hearing from your key opinion leaders on that?
We believe it's a strength and an opportunity for Orviglance, because when we look back, let's say 5 years ago, the big manufacturers have had gadolinium in their portfolio for years and years. And of course, their messaging is, we don't have to worry, it's very rare, these patients are very, very small proportion, and so forth. But actually, we know both for the patients with severely impaired kidney function, there is a potential risk. But we also know gadolinium is retained in all tissue, our brains and so forth, for all patients. So with these other players coming to market talking about we should perhaps be careful about gadolinium in general, it really supports also Orviglance. And just a very interesting side note is that when the cases that have been studied with gadolinium, they don't show necessarily that the side effects are linked to the dose, size of the dose. Because if you have severely impaired kidney function and you cannot excrete the gadolinium, well, then it doesn't matter what the amount of gadolinium is. So we think it's good.
And looking at also on the other side, I guess you have a very good overview what is coming. So I guess that's the trend you can see, or trend you kind of argued for that is not, and you don't see other agents being developed. I know you can see through the pipelines and so on, something that
we are following this, of course. Yeah, we're following this closely. There is a manganese agent in early clinical development by GE, and it's a manganese IV agent, so intravenous. It enters the blood circulation, so it's for a full body imaging. Orviglance is for a liver specific imaging. It's the same landscape you have for gadolinium contrast agents. Some are full body, some are CNS, and there's a liver specific agent as well. So it's the same dynamic. So we're not competitors. And again, we believe it's good for Orviglance that there is movement and others building, you could say, the messaging, or let's say the awareness and advocacy around using manganese as a contrast agent. So we think this is good. And that's also what we hear from key opinion leaders and what we see at the conferences and so forth. So with this opportunity, we're addressing an $800 million market annually, US dollars, and almost half of that is in the US. We have prepared all the work in terms of market research, working with payers on pricing, reimbursement, and a roadmap for a very focused launch of Orviglance, because these are very few patients. And our strategy is to commercialize with a partner where we can use the synergies capabilities of someone already having a commercial infrastructure. If we just drill a little bit further into the US market, the patient population that we are targeting represents around 100,000 abdominal imaging procedures per year. It's around 50,000 patients, and we have real-world data, so actual realized procedures where we can see how many patients these are, how many imaging procedures they have, and we can also see that they are at the larger hospitals. So 400 accounts in the US is actually a very focused launch. When you can work with these 400 accounts, you can capture 75% of the market opportunity for Orviglance. And also we worked with experts in pricing and reimbursement and have really strong support for very attractive pricing. We looked also at other innovative diagnostics in the US. So a very interesting case for a focused launch of Orviglance starting in the US.
And looking at the pricing, is that if you say key opinion leaders, everybody is actually acknowledging this toxic way of treating it now. Why not treat none other kidney patient? I guess some can also not be seen as in a risk, but actually it will show up anyway, you know. So yeah. Is the pricing too much? And I know it's through your partner you will do this, but could it be more broad-based? Could it be a bigger population, or is the pricing and the way you want to launch it, is that a barrier to maybe see it in not only the black box warning patients?
Yeah. I mean, the strategy for your label, so your target patient population and use in clinical practice starts very early on in the design of the clinical study, discussion with regulatory authorities. And we believe this strategy, where for patients where there's a black box warning for gadolinium, is where we add most value for the patients. But also, and this was an opportunity for an orphan drug designation, which means the clinical development program is simpler, the launch is simpler, and there's a premium value because these patients are very vulnerable. It has very little impact for the budget holders to fund a premium product with high value for the patient. So that's the strategy we've chosen, and that trade-off is always there, like between volume and value. The gadolinium manufacturers, it's a volume game. They've been there for a long time, so it also means in terms of commercial effort, this is the strategy chosen. So if you wanted to go with the big volume of all liver imaging, then you would need data for that. And you would also be under pressure from payers to say, listen, then is it for this broader patient population without these safety concerns? What's the value provided compared to the pricing? So then it's a different strategy. Is there someone where you could say the label intended says where you have severely impaired kidney function, or where gadolinium may otherwise be medically inadvisable? Are there cases where gadolinium can be medically inadvisable? Yes, probably. And that's, again, for each physician to see, could that be someone who's just had a transplant, a kidney transplant, and have been on dialysis before, for example. So you may not fall under the threshold now, but you did recently and so forth.
But I will of course not ask you already to speculate in off-label use.
I mean, we are targeting the label, yes. But of course there are cases. I mean, it is a physician judgment when is gadolinium medically inadvisable. Yeah. But of course, we have a label and data supporting our target patient population. Yeah. So just on this one, I mean, the concerns with gadolinium are recognized in clinical practice. When we speak to physicians, we've done market research, and many of them have experienced also these cases of NSF. And this is about the momentum for change, the momentum for an alternative to gadolinium. And you also brought up, what is happening in the industry. And so there's the black box warning with a patient population we are addressing with severely impaired kidney function, or where we should be careful about using gadolinium. But as we also discussed a couple of minutes ago, we already know there might be other concerns with gadolinium. Deposition in brain, all other organs, it contaminates our water because it's excreted in urine into our sewage system, environment, and so forth. So that's those are some of the drivers behind these new, you could say, developments and current focus areas of the industry. We believe this is an opportunity for us because we are sort of early first bringing to market this manganese liver specific agent, and then the industry generally is talking about being careful about using gadolinium in general. So we think this is very interesting for us and a really good momentum for bringing Orviglance to market. So our strategy is to launch with a partner that maximizes the value of Orviglance. We can use established capabilities and so forth. And we've taken this asset very far. So it's an attractive opportunity for a partner. De-risked asset, clinical development completed, in the process of the NDA review, a high recognized unmet need, clear decision makers, and so forth. So this is an interesting opportunity for many types of partners, especially also when we move, out of the space of development, but into the pure, you could say, commercial execution. And the dialogues with potential partners is progressing, so we're very excited about this opportunity to work with a partner for the launch. So all in all, addressing a very attractive $800 million US addressable market for patients with a high unmet need. And we've taken this asset a long way. We can also see that our data is well received by the medical community at the conferences and so forth. So let's talk a little bit about this NDA process. So as mentioned, we are seeking approval for Orviglance as a liver MRI contrast agent for patients with severe kidney impairment or when gadolinium may be otherwise medically inadvisable, as I talked about. We submitted an NDA early September, very attractive benefit risk profile. And of course, we have the commercial scale manufacturing orphan drug designation, which has given us advantages in development and will continue to do so into the commercial stage. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's just FDA, and I have to ask as an old pharma analyst, have you had any discussion with FDA besides what is usual? They will ask questions to conduct a review, but I need to ask you whether you have had any unusual questions from the FDA.
So, as you also said, that in the review process, you receive questions along the way, from fairly early on, all the way until approval. And based on the questions we have received so far, we have a high confidence in the FDA continuing the review process. So we haven't seen anything concerning, our belief and plans. So far so good. As I mentioned, I'll just jump to this next. Jumping a bit back, as the next milestone is around this day 74 letter, mid-November, where the FDA will confirm the formal continuation of the review and give us a date by when they expect to make a decision. So that could be 10 months after the submission, so early July next year. And then of course there are also opportunities to continue into other markets. So maybe I'll just quickly jump back, the whole clinical package, both strong efficacy compared to unenhanced imaging, which is the agreed comparator for us with this patient population, and a very favorable safety profile. No concerns discovered, typically mild, moderate, and also transient, so temporary, you can say nausea and so forth. So nothing concerning in terms of safety. And then here's an example. You can really see how on the right image here, you can both see these lesions better, but there's also a lesion that you can't see on the left side where you don't have Orviglance enhanced image. So visually, you can see the improvement, but on the right side, you can also see the outcome of the clinical study is a measurement on a scale from 1 to 4, where physicians score, so 3 readers score how much better in this case, so you can see they're all to the right, is Orviglance compared to unenhanced. So really strong results from our clinical study. And again, we're looking forward to this next milestone mid-November and continuing in the preparations, and we continue to be ready for questions from the FDA. So I'll just wrap up on financials, and then we have more time for other questions as well. In Q3, we had an operating loss, so i.e. cost of 15 million Swedish kronor. It's lower than in Q2, and that's really due to the finalization of the NDA here in Q3. And we had, at the end of the quarter, 72 million Swedish kronor in liquid assets. I mentioned clean balance sheet because of the conversion of the convertibles with Fenja, 7.5 million, which was a loan, and now that's sort of out of the picture, and they received shares instead. And then we had the directed issue of 30 million. Based on inbound investor interest, this made good sense for us because it means also now we really have a runway into Q4 next year, so well beyond the FDA approval date. And that's also an advantage when we think about negotiations with a partner and so forth. So, yeah, that brings me just to the summary here of our focus areas. Timely approval by the FDA of Orviglance according to our target label, with a near-term milestone mid-November for the continuation of the approval and a date, and then mid-next year, early July, Orviglance is ready to be brought to market with a partner, and that's an ongoing process to set up an agreement with a partner for the commercialization. And of course, make sure from a, for example, manufacturing perspective, Orviglance is ready for launch. So that gives us some minutes.
For questions, let's jump into 80% of the questions. Yep. What everybody wants to know, and I think that's very natural. Partner timeline before New Year. Everybody is asking. Any comments on the timeline, Julie?
I understand both the questions, the curiosity, and the impatience. I mean, I think what's important is to think about it. It is not in the interest of Ascelia, and therefore also not in the interest of investors to be very specific here, because a deal is a deal, and we will when it's signed, and of course we will communicate when it's signed. Until then, you know, we talk to investors about what kind of partners and what makes it an interesting asset and so forth, and it really truly is an asset brought very far, de-risked, a focused launch with a clear unmet need. So a very interesting opportunity for many types of partners, right? Because this is a hospital product, so if you have a field team in the hospitals, there are some commercialization synergies. So it depends on the partner. Is it someone who works with orphan drugs, high-value drugs? Is it someone working in radiology and so forth? So that's our focus, and I hope everyone appreciates that is in the interest of all of us, that we have all eyes on establishing such an agreement.
And perfect. And big, small partner, bigger presence, small. Your product is more important to them. Any thoughts you have done there? Anything? And I guess you don't need such a big partner where you could actually drown in their strategy suddenly. I guess with your targeted audience, is that correctly understood?
It's an important point, right? Because it should be meaningful for a partner, because otherwise you can risk that the product is neglected if something else comes up or they have other issues. But meaningful can be both in terms of contribution to their P&L. It could also be meaningful in terms of portfolio strategy, future launch strategy, not the current P&L, but the other future portfolio and pipeline. So there are different ways of having a synergy, not only the size. There are also there are some companies that are purely sort of specialty pharmas that really focus on commercial execution, and there are many things that come into play. You know, if that's your your game, then you have a field team that needs a new product, at certain time points, and this can be a good fit in a portfolio. So meaningful and contribution to the business of a partner, I think that's important for the success of Overglass.
And there's also a question here a little bit other. When would the optimal time be to have a partner in and being ready to launch? I think it's a question on if you could choose what's the optimal timing, but I guess you can't choose exactly the timing.
The optimal timing is when we have the right terms and we have found the right partner, we've signed the agreement. So we are on track. We have a roadmap. We prepared a lot of things that are needed early on. We have relationships with experts, key opinion leaders. Manufacturing is on track. We've done, as mentioned, a lot of work on access and reimbursement, and have a roadmap ready for a partner to execute. So depending on what type of partner, I mean, they do this with other assets and have the infrastructure in place. So of course they are used to this game. So the optimal time is when we have the right terms and yeah. And I
think that's the correct answer. Then it's a little about this Ascelia Capital. Did they request to convert them to shares? I guess that is in the deal structure.
Yes, exactly. So the deal structure with Ascelia is that they can request a conversion, which is really advantageous for us because the price is fixed, right? But if they don't request a conversion, then we would have needed to pay back the loan at the end of this year. So it's great for us that those 7.5 million, they wanted to convert. They see an opportunity and upside to that conversion. So good for us, and nice to have a clean balance sheet as well.
Perfectly. And then there's a little bit of comment about the timing of this capital raise just before potentially signing a partner. Any thoughts about that? Anything we should read into to the potential timing of this capital raise you did?
Yeah, no, I mean it was good timing, right? Because as you said, also there was inbound interest. You also want to put together, it is some meaningful amount, but again, as is also mentioned, if we're looking into a partnering agreement as part of the strategy, we're not in a place where we should do a big raise that wouldn't be meaningful. This is a meaningful amount. It's a good timing because it extends our runway into Q4 next year, so well beyond the approval date. And this is also important when we negotiate the partner, right? Because it was into Q2 next year before, now it's into Q4. So meaningful amount and suitable time.
Using your leverage, I guess. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then there's, let me see. Then there's a little bit, when you have taken most of the regulatory risk and did much of the groundwork, should you expect a heavy upfront payment, or I guess maybe you don't want to go down to details on the partnership you are negotiating?
I think we shouldn't comment on that. I've seen some of the comments and so forth. It would be great. I think what we want to say, of course, it would be great. But it's all about the right partner and the right terms. That's the key thing. But I mean, I understand the questions and the answer is, of course, it would be great. I think that's also what is being alluded to that Magnus said. I think that's what is mentioned in the questions. That would be great, but it's all about the right partner at the right terms.
And I think there's also some connection to some statement that he has made. I think you can correct that statement. I think I even have heard it was nice if it would be before end year. Is that correct?
Yeah, but as I said, that would be nice. But it's about the right terms and the right partner.
Yeah, perfect.
That's the most important.
Then there's this question: if the visuals are better than normal dye, can it be better substitute for normal MRI? Also, thinking a little bit broader on this, on your potential.
Specifically, we have a small study where we're comparing to a gadolinium agent that has a liver-specific label in Europe, and what we saw there was that the pictures are comparable. So you could say in that sense comparable, but I think it's really important that we're back to the portfolio strategy question. Where do we maximize the value for patients and therefore also for Orviglance? And that is by addressing this unmet need where gadolinium is not medically advisable, because that's where we address an unmet need and therefore can ask for a higher price. And so that's where we see the strongest case for Orviglance and for patients.
Perfect. And then there's, I think, the last question here, and there's a lot of questions around the partner, but I think I have gotten you as far as I can. It's on the cost side. What should we expect for the cost side now? It went down because, of course, the heavy cost of filling the NDA and now not. So what should we expect about the cost side into the next year?
Yeah, I mean, you can see here 72 million end of September, runway into Q4 next year. So if you divide by quarters, based on the trend, you can see that it's lower. It's on the lower end of what it has been the last year. So I think that math will tell us that it's around the average of these levels on the lower end of what we've seen the last year. But it does. Those numbers tell us it's usually cheaper to do a review than it is to prepare the file.
And then there's a final question, and I know your answer. You already answered that on the upfront payment, but is the licensing percentage expected to be at the same size as in drug deals or lower?
I think so. If we look at drug deals generally, the further you've taken the asset, the higher usually the royalty. Right? You see early stage assets with royalties that are low one digits. Once you've taken your asset further, the royalties go up, right? And then you see, we've been asked before, some of the ranges are definitely double digit and strong ones as well. So I mean, it's a trade-off between the upfront and the royalty. So it's an industry with many types of deals, and we're going to be somewhere in that landscape that makes most sense for the business case for Orviglance, with an asset taken very far and de-risked.
Check. I think that was the last question. Thank you to you, Julie, for taking us through your results, your case, and the milestones you delivered on the product side in the quarter. And thank you for the audience listening in and asking questions. And I'm sorry I couldn't ask 20 times the same question. I guess I would have gotten the same answer on the partner side. So I'm sorry for not asking all the questions exactly the same way, but I guess it would not have mattered. But thank you for asking them anyway.
Yes, thank you for questions, and thank you for today, Mikael.